What happens when a greedy tycoon mocks a poor old man's faith while his saws prepare to crush a sacred forest? Your god won't stop me, Dizon laughed, but a quiet stranger in a denim barong stepped forward. What happened next made the machines weep and the powerful fall in silence. The morning sun in Isabella province was not warm. It felt like a heavy golden weight pressing down on the red dust of the clearing. Mr. Efren Dizon stood on a wooden platform. He was a man whose wealth was measured in the thousands of hectares he had stripped bare. His belly was round from expensive meals, and his fingers were thick with gold rings. In his hands, he held a shovel plated in real gold. This was the symbol of his power over the land. Below him, the villagers of the small barangay gathered. They were people of the soil, with skin darkened by years of labor. Among them stood Mateo. He was 80 years old, and as thin as a bamboo reed. For 40 years, Mateo had been the guardian of this forest. He wore a faded shirt and a simple wooden cross around his neck. The cross was smooth, worn down by decades of prayer. Behind them stood the ancient Narra trees. They were giants with roots that reached deep into the history of the Philippines. Their leaves whispered secrets of ancestors and ancient storms. Mr. Dizon cleared his throat into the microphone. The sound cracked like a whip over the silent crowd. "Today, progress begins," he shouted. "We will turn this useless jungle into a city of the future." Mateo took a trembling step forward. He did not look at the gold shovel. He looked at the trees. "Please, Mr. Dizon." The old man's voice was soft but clear. "These trees are our shield. They hold the earth when the great typhoons come. They are sacred to our fathers." Dizon let out a roar of laughter that shook his heavy frame. He looked at Mateo's dusty feet and the cheap wooden cross. "Your god didn't sign these permits, old man," he mocked. "And he won't stop my saws from biting into this wood." With a sneer, Dizon shoved Mateo back. The old man fell into the red dust. No one moved to help him. The fear of Dizon's guards was like a cold shadow. At the edge of the clearing, a man in a denim barong stood quietly. His face was shadowed by a simple straw hat. He watched the scene with eyes that seemed to hold the weight of the sea. Mateo stayed on his knees, breathing in the dust. The heavy machinery began to roar, a mechanical beast waking up to kill. Do you believe that a single heart can stand against the roar of iron and greed? If you find strength in those who protect what is holy, please like this video and subscribe to our journey. What would you do if the world you loved was about to be torn down before your eyes? Mateo was not always a lonely old man living in the shadow of the mountains. Many years ago, he was the most respected teacher in the entire mountain barangay. For 40 long years, he stood before the children of the poor with a piece of chalk and a heart full of hope. He taught them that their dignity was not found in their pockets, but in their integrity. Every month, when he received his humble salary, he did something that the others thought was foolish. He did not buy a television or a fancy car. Instead, he bought small parcels of land on the edge of the forest. He did this to keep the industrial giants from poisoning the soil and cutting the breath of the mountain. His hands were not the hands of a scholar anymore. They were thick with heavy calluses and deep lines filled with earth. He had planted over 5,000 saplings with his own fingers over the decades. Each tree was a labor of love, dedicated to the memory of his late wife, Maria. She had died young, and Mateo believed that her soul lived on in the rustle of the Narra leaves. The villagers still tell stories of the great typhoon of 2011. When the waters rose like a hungry beast, most people fled to the higher ground. But Mateo stayed behind in the dark and the rain. He pulled his neighbors from the swirling mud with a strength that seemed to come from heaven. He sheltered 30 people in his modest stilt house, sharing his last bag of rice until the sun came out. He always carries a small leather notebook in his pocket. Inside, he records the growth of each tree like a father recording the height of his children. To Mateo, the forest was not just timber or a source of money. It was a living cathedral where he could hear the voice of the Creator in the wind. Despite the ache in his knees, he walks 5 miles every single morning. He checks that the mountain streams are clear of trash and the birds are undisturbed. His life is a quiet testament to a faith that does not shout. It is built on the belief that a man's worth is measured by what he leaves for those who come after him. He wanted the children to have shade and clean water long after he was gone. But now, The very world he built with his sweat is being threatened by the greed of men who see only profit. The red dust on his face is a reminder of the battle he is fighting alone. The shadows began to darken over Matteo's life in a way he never expected. It started with letters from lawyers in expensive suits from the city. Mr. Dizon's company launched a series of orchestrated legal attacks. They used words like zoning and eminent domain to strip Matteo of his remaining land titles. Within a single month, corrupt local officials arrived at his door with a piece of paper. They declared his small wooden home a fire hazard and ordered it to be torn down. Matteo was forced to move into a tiny shack made of salvaged corrugated iron and old crates. The heat inside was like a furnace, but he did not complain. Then, the silence from the city became a different kind of pain. His only son, who worked on a construction site in Manila to send money home, stopped calling. A week later, a stranger arrived to say there had been a terrible accident. His son was in a deep coma, lying in a hospital bed surrounded by machines. The medical bills were like a flood that washed away Matteo's tiny life savings in a matter of days. The neighbors he once saved from the typhoon now turned their faces away when he passed. They were afraid of being targeted by Mr. Dizon's vast influence and his private guards. Even the local parish priest, a man Matteo had known for years, lowered his eyes. "Maybe it is time to let the trees go, Matteo," the priest whispered. "You need to find peace and focus on your son." It felt like a betrayal of everything he had lived for. He was a stranger in his own village, walking through the dust while the logging trucks lined up. Their engines vibrated through the ground like a constant mocking heartbeat. Every thud of the machinery felt like a hammer hitting his own chest. He realized that he was truly alone in his fight against the giant machines of the company. Now, as the sun sets behind the machines, the silence feels like a heavy shroud. If you believe that God sees the tears of the humble even when the world turns away, please like this video and subscribe to stay with Matteo. The darkness is coming, but the story is not over. Who do you think will stand with him when the first saw begins to spin? On a Tuesday evening, after receiving a final eviction notice, Matteo walks to the oldest Narra tree at the center of the grove. This giant has stood for over 200 years, surviving wars and volcanic ash. The rain begins to fall, a warm tropical downpour that turns the earth into a muddy graveyard of broken branches. Matteo sits at the base of the massive trunk, his head bowed low against the bark. He no longer has the strength to pray for a miracle or shout against the howling wind. He simply leans his back against the rough wood, feeling the cold rain soak through his thin, frayed shirt. He is accepting that tomorrow the saws will come for this last giant of the forest. The silence of the mountain is heavy, broken only by the rhythmic dripping of water and the distant hum of the highway. He feels like a failure to his ancestors, to his wife Maria, and to the God he has served faithfully for 80 years. In this moment of absolute emptiness, he closes his eyes, waiting for the morning light to bring the final destruction of his world. The darkness is absolute, but the roots of the tree are deep and patient. Every drop of rain feels like a tear shed by the land itself for its guardian. Matteo thinks of his son in the hospital, and his small shack that smells of wet metal and rust. He remembers the feeling of a classroom and the sound of children laughing under the shade of these very trees. Now, those children are gone, and the laughter is replaced by the growl of diesel engines. He touches the wooden cross on his chest, but his fingers are too cold to feel the shape of it. He wonders if the forest feels the pain of the saws before they even touch the bark. He wonders if God is silent, because there is nothing left to say to a world that loves gold more than life. The old man's breath is slow and shallow, blending with the mist that rises from the valley floor. He is a small, broken figure beneath a kingly tree, waiting for the end of a long and tired journey. He feels the weight of every sapling he ever planted, now feeling like a burden of lost hopes. The mud clings to his trousers like the hands of the earth trying to pull him down into a final sleep. He does not fight the cold. He embraces it as the only thing he has left. The world is about to witness a strength that does not come from machines or money. If you believe that the quietest prayers are often the ones that shake the heavens, please like this video and subscribe to see what happens at dawn. Suddenly the rain slows to a fine mist, and the air becomes unnaturally still. Matteo feels a warmth against his shoulder, though the sun is still hours away. He does not open his eyes yet, afraid that any movement will break the fragile peace that has suddenly filled the clearing. He feels a presence near him, something steady and solid like the mountain itself. It is not the presence of a guard or a ghost, but something that feels like home. The smell of the rain changes, now carrying a hint of fresh jasmine and clean cedar wood. Mateo wonders if he is finally dreaming, or if the end has already come in the silence of the night. He realizes that even in the deepest shadow, he is not as alone as he thought. The heavy heartbeat of the logging trucks in the distance seems to fade, replaced by the steady throb of the earth. He waits in the grey light for the first sign of the men who will come to destroy his cathedral. He is ready to stand, even if his legs fail him, because the tree deserves a witness to its fall. But the light that begins to creep over the ridge is not the one he expected. Have you ever felt that the moment of your greatest defeat was actually the beginning of a different kind of victory? If you believe that God speaks in the silence of our deepest pain, please support this story with a like and subscribe to our channel. Do you think Mateo will find the strength to face the saws when the sun finally rises over the Narra grove? As the first light of dawn filters through the canopy, Mateo notices a man sitting on a fallen log nearby. The stranger is carving a piece of wood with a simple pocket knife, his movements steady and calm. He wears a common laborer's hat and a shirt stained with the red earth of the Philippines, looking like any other traveler. He looks up and smiles at Mateo, calling him by his childhood nickname, Teo, a name unused for decades. The stranger speaks of the deep roots of the Narra, describing how they hold the very soul of the island together. He shares a piece of dried fish and rice with Mateo, and as they eat, a profound peace radiates from him. The wood remembers the hand that planted it, and the Creator remembers the heart that protected it, the stranger says softly. Mateo finds himself telling the man things he had never told anyone, feeling as though he is speaking to an old friend. The stranger's hands are rough, like those of a carpenter who has worked for a lifetime. He does not offer a magic solution or a bag of gold, but his presence makes the fear in Mateo's heart vanish. They sit together in the waking forest as the birds begin their morning songs, oblivious to the machines waiting at the gate. The man talks about the seasons of a tree's life, explaining that some storms are meant to test the roots, not break them. Every word he speaks feels like a cool bandage on Mateo's bruised dignity. He tells Mateo that no drop of sweat shed for the earth is ever wasted in the eyes of the Father. The old man looks at the stranger's feet, which are dusty and clad in simple, worn-out rubber sandals. There is an authority in his gentleness that silenced the distant roar of the highway. Mateo feels his strength returning, not the strength of youth, but the quiet power of a man who knows he is loved. As the sun rises higher, the light catches the stranger's face, revealing skin weathered by the sun and eyes full of ancient mercy. He stands up and brushes the wood shavings from his trousers, looking toward the ridge where the logging crew will appear. He doesn't look like a warrior, yet Mateo feels that no army could move this man from his path. The stranger places a hand on Mateo's shoulder, and for a moment, the old man forgets the debt and the hospital bills. He only feels the warmth of the morning and the sacred duty he has carried for 40 years. The air smells of crushed jasmine and damp earth, a scent that seems to follow the stranger's every move. Mateo realizes that the miracle is not the absence of the enemy, but the presence of a friend who knows the way through the fire. The world is about to witness a truth that no amount of money can bury or burn. If you believe that God sends his messengers exactly when we have reached the end of our own strength, please like this video and subscribe to see the truth revealed. The stranger looks at the great Narra and then back at Mateo with a nod of silent understanding. He tells Mateo to stand firm, for the ground beneath them is holy and cannot be bought by those with empty souls. The machinery in the distance starts to growl again, but the sound no longer makes Mateo tremble. He stands beside the traveler, two humble figures against the backdrop of a forest that refuses to die. The stranger's pocket knife is folded away, but the work he has started in Mateo's heart is just beginning to unfold. The heavy trucks begin to move, their tires churning the mud, unaware that the king of the forest is already waiting for them. Mateo takes a deep breath, the air filling his lungs with a clarity he hasn't felt since he was a young teacher. If this story of a quiet visitor in the woods touches your heart, support it with a like and subscribe to witness the coming storm. Do you believe that a simple man with a peaceful heart can stop the march of greed? Write Amen in the comments if you believe God is always with the humble. The logging crew arrives at exactly 8 in the morning, led by Mr. Dyson himself. He is eager to see the King Narra fall for a lucrative furniture contract today. The stranger stands up from the log and walks slowly toward the giant tree. He places his hand firmly on the rough bark, as if embracing an old friend. Dyson screams at him to move, his face turning a dark shade of purple. But the stranger simply looks at him with a gaze so calm and steady. It makes the tycoon's expensive gold-ringed hands begin to shake for no visible reason. When the head logger tries to start his heavy-duty chainsaw, the engine only coughs. It dies immediately, refusing to spark, despite being brand new and well-maintained yesterday. One by one, the other machines fail to start, their metal hearts staying silent. The hydraulic fluid in the bulldozers begins to leak out onto the red dust. It looks as if the metal itself were weeping for the ancient giants of Isabella. The stranger whispers something to the tree, his lips moving in a silent, holy prayer. Suddenly, the tropical wind stops completely, and a brilliant, unnatural light reflects off the leaves. The glow is so intense it temporarily blinds the workers, making them shield their eyes. In the confusion and the silence, the stranger disappears into the thick green ferns. He leaves behind only a scent of fresh rain and crushed jasmine in the air. Mr. Dyson is standing in the mud, his mouth open but no words coming out. He looks at his silent machines, then at the tree that refuses to be cut. There is a weight in the air that has nothing to do with the humidity. It is the weight of a truth that has finally come out into the light. The workers are whispering among themselves, their faces pale with a mix of fear and awe. They have seen many things in the forest, but they have never seen the earth say no. Matteo stands by the roots, his hand touching the spot where the stranger's hand had been. He feels a warmth there, a pulsing life that vibrates through his own tired old bones. The forest is not a factory. It is a living witness to a power beyond gold. Dyson tries to shout again, but his voice sounds thin and hollow against the silence of the trees. He looks small, like a child trying to command the ocean to stop its waves. The gold shovel he held so proudly is now covered in common, sticky red mountain mud. The machines have failed, and the silence of the forest is now a deafening roar of justice. If you believe that no machine can ever break what God has truly blessed, please like this video and subscribe. The truth is coming, and it will not be silenced by money or threats. Matteo watches as the head logger drops his chainsaw into the dirt with a heavy thud. The man crosses himself, his eyes wide as he looks at the ancient Narra tree. "I will not touch this wood," the logger whispers, his voice trembling with sudden conviction. Other workers begin to step back, their tools forgotten in the tall grass and the mud. Mr. Dyson is screaming about contracts and lawyers, but his words are falling on deaf ears now. The air feels charged, like the moment just before a massive lightning strike hits the ground. Matteo realizes that the stranger did not fight with a sword or a loud voice. He fought with a presence that made the darkness recognize its own terrible emptiness and shame. The old man feels a tear roll down his cheek, but it is not a tear of sadness. It is the first drop of a flood of relief that is starting to wash his soul. He looks at the King Narra and sees it standing taller than it ever did before. If this moment of silent victory moves you, please support our channel with a like and subscribe. Do you believe that when we protect God's creation, He steps in to protect us in return? Write Amen in the comments if you believe in the power of a quiet miracle. Just as Mr. Dyson begins to curse his men and scream at the top of his lungs, a loud noise echoes from the mountain road. A fleet of black SUVs speeds up the dirt track, kicking up clouds of thick red dust that coat the expensive clothes of the tycoon. Several high-ranking federal agents step out with heavy folders and arrest warrants in their hands. It is revealed that the stranger had left a detailed folder of documents at the regional governor's office earlier that morning. These papers contain undeniable proof of Mr. Dyson's involvement in a massive illegal land-grabbing scheme across the province. The permits Dyson bragged about are exposed as cheap forgeries, signed by officials who have already been taken into custody. The evidence is so overwhelming and clear that Dyson's own lawyers refuse to take his desperate calls on his satellite phone. The workers, seeing the tide of power turn so quickly, drop their tools into the mud and refuse to move a single finger for the fallen boss. Some of the older men kneel in prayer by the trucks, realizing that something holy and beyond their understanding has occurred in this forest. Mr. Dyson, stripped of his authority and facing decades in a dark prison cell, looks at the ancient Narra tree one last time. He sees his own reflection in the polished blades of the silent saws. He looks small, hollow, and utterly defeated by a truth he couldn't buy. Matteo stands tall among his trees, not with a spirit of pride, but with the quiet strength of a man who has seen the hand of justice move in the silence. The forest remains standing, its leaves rustling in a soft breeze that feels like a collective sigh of relief from the earth. By sunset, the local radio announces that the King Narra and the surrounding grove are officially declared a protected national monument forever. The roar of the engines has been replaced by the song of the birds returning to their nests. If you believe that the truth eventually finds its way into the light, no matter how deep it is buried, please like this video and subscribe. This is the moment where the humble inherit the earth and the proud are brought to their knees. Dizon is led away in handcuffs, his polished shoes ruined by the very soil he tried to steal from the people. He looks back at Matteo, expecting to see a face full of hatred or a look of mocking victory. Instead, he sees the old man's eyes filled with a strange kind of pity that cuts deeper than any insult could. Matteo knows that Dizon has lost everything because he never understood the value of things that have no price tag. The federal agents treat Matteo with a respect he hasn't felt in many years, calling him the true owner of the mountain's soul. The villagers who had turned away in fear now gather at the edge of the clearing, their faces wet with tears of shame and joy. They realize that the old teacher was right all along. The trees were not just wood, they were their dignity. The air is cool and smells of the damp forest floor, a scent that promises a new beginning for everyone in the valley. Matteo walks to the oldest tree and leans his forehead against it, whispering a thank you to the architect who builds with hearts instead of stone. He feels the rough bark under his palms and knows that the roots are finally safe from the bite of the steel teeth. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold, a crown for the forest that refused to fall. The battle of the saws is over, but the story of the forest is just beginning to blossom in the hearts of the villagers. If this victory of the small over the mighty strengthens your faith today, please support us with a like and subscribe to our channel. Do you believe that God uses the most humble people to bring down the most powerful empires? Share your thoughts in the comments below. A year later, the Narra Grove has been transformed into a beautiful community park and a sanctuary for the elderly. This change was funded entirely by the seized assets of the Dizon Corporation after the long court trials. Matteo's son miraculously woke from his deep coma just 3 weeks after the incident in the forest. Now, he works every day alongside his father, teaching the next generation of village children how to care for the earth. They walk together under the shade of the giants, 2 generations of men who know the value of a tree. Matteo often sits on a simple wooden bench by the great King Narra tree at the center. Nearby, a small wooden plaque has been placed by an unknown hand to mark the sacred ground. No one knows who carved the beautiful image of a shepherd on it, but the craft is perfect. Sometimes, visitors to the park claim to see a man in a denim barong walking among the young saplings. They say he helps the heavy branches stand straight after a tropical storm or a heavy rain. Matteo knows that while the busy world sees only a forest, he sees a living testimony of faith. He knows that no act of quiet faith or sacrifice is ever truly forgotten by the heavens. He smiles at the green horizon, knowing that the great architect is always present in the world. He is hidden in the deep shade of the trees and in the hearts of the humble. The story ends with a view of the lush green mountains of Isabella under a peaceful sky. It is a reminder that the strongest walls are those built with faith, not with cold concrete. The forest breathes again, and the silence is no longer lonely, but filled with a divine presence. If this story reminded you that God sees everything and acts in His perfect time, please support it. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and write the word faith in the comments below. Your support helps us share these quiet miracles of the heart with the rest of the world. The legacy of the teacher has become the future of the children who play beneath the ancient branches. Matteo watches them and feels a peace that passes all understanding, a gift from the traveler who once sat on a log. He remembers the taste of the dried fish and the warmth of the stranger's smile in the dawn light. The red dust of the clearing is now covered by soft green grass and the petals of tropical flowers. The machines are gone, and in their place, the slow and steady pulse of life continues its holy rhythm. Matteo breathes in the scent of jasmine and wood, knowing that his work as a guardian is finally complete. He is not just a caretaker of trees, but a witness to the truth that love is stronger than greed. The mountains stand as silent witnesses to the day the king of the forest met the king of the world. As the sun sets, the shadows of the Narra trees stretch long and protective over the village they saved. It is a peace that was bought with patience and a faith that refused to break under the saw. Matteo closes his eyes and listens to the leaves, hearing the whisper of a friend who promised to stay. The morning sun in Isabella province was not warm. It felt like a heavy golden weight pressing down on the red dust of the clearing. Mr. Efrendizon stood on a wooden platform. He was a man whose wealth was measured in the thousands of hectares he had stripped bare. His belly was round from expensive meals, and his fingers were thick with gold rings. In his hands, he held a shovel plated in real gold. This was the symbol of his power over the land. Below him, the villagers of the small barangay gathered. They were people of the soil, with skin darkened by years of labor. Among them stood Matteo. He was 80 years old and as thin as a bamboo reed. For 40 years, Matteo had been the guardian of this forest. He wore a faded shirt and a simple wooden cross around his neck. The cross was smooth, worn down by decades of prayer. Behind them stood the ancient Narra trees. They were giants with roots that reached deep into the history of the Philippines. Their leaves whispered secrets of ancestors and ancient storms. Mr. Dizon cleared his throat into the microphone. The sound cracked like a whip over the silent crowd. "Today, progress begins," he shouted. "We will turn this useless jungle into a city of the future." Matteo took a trembling step forward. He did not look at the gold shovel. He looked at the trees. "Please, Mr. Dizon." The old man's voice was soft but clear. "These trees are our shield. They hold the earth when the great typhoons come. They are sacred to our fathers." Dizon let out a roar of laughter that shook his heavy frame. He looked at Matteo's dusty feet and the cheap wooden cross. "Your God didn't sign these permits, old man," he mocked, "and he won't stop my saws from biting into this wood." With a sneer, Dizon shoved Matteo back. The old man fell into the red dust. No one moved to help him. The fear of Dizon's guards was like a cold shadow. At the edge of the clearing, a man in a denim barong stood quietly. His face was shadowed by a simple straw hat. He watched the scene with eyes that seemed to hold the weight of the sea. Matteo stayed on his knees, breathing in the dust. The heavy machinery began to roar, a mechanical beast waking up to kill. Do you believe that a single heart can stand against the roar of iron and greed? If you find strength in those who protect what is holy, please like this video and subscribe to our journey. What would you do if the world you loved was about to be torn down before your eyes?